Hello, folks. This is Kaiser from Kaisers Kastle. Hope everybody's doing well out there today. Today I'm bringing on a guest. I'll let him introduce himself after I explain. Known him for quite a while. He's a fellow contractor, PHU member. You know, Pipe Hitters Union. This is before they had a clothesline. Isn't that right, Shawn? And we've been doing this for a long time.
Roger that.
Yeah. I figured he'd have some good input. We're going to have a pretty good show today, and I think you all enjoy wherever we go with this. So if you want, take it away, Shawn, and introduce yourself, brother.
Kaiser, my name is Shawn, and I've been private military contracting since 2004, and worked straight through to today. Done everything from close protection jobs to force protection on bases and convoy operations throughout Afghanistan and Iraq and other theaters as well.
Right. Do you want to? What year? What year?
That'll give you a little bit of a hint as to my background. I've done quite a bit when it comes to being able to put together teams.
Yep.
Work with teams and work with local nationals in several different countries.
Roger that. What year was it that you started out again? My fault. I missed out on that.
The exact date would be December of 2003. I started in Iraq.
Oh, okay. Yep. A lot of times if people look up contracting, PMCs, they'll usually see on, what do you call it, your face or my face. I think we're the most photographed people in Iraq that I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, if you look up on Google and you put in private military contractor, I guarantee you'll see a picture of me somewhere in the first 10, 15 of them.
Yep, usually. I just thought that was a funny factoid that people would be interested in. Anyways, yeah, I started full-on contracting when I left federal service in 2005. And, you know, that's pretty much, everybody knows my history. It's not about me. So, anyways, any back history on your military service or law enforcement or whatever?
Well, I mean, I've mentioned prior that I'm very much involved in the federal service myself. However, what's really kicked off my career was the death of one of my friends on a dying corps contract in Palace, basically. And what happened to Mark Parsons on that dying corps contract? He was killed along with two other contractors in 2003. And his death really motivated me getting into the profession and making a difference for our country and fighting the enemies that we have abroad.
I understand that completely. I felt like I was spinning my wheels back home here in America and decided to jump in with both feet, as it were. You know how that stuff is, brother.
Well, yeah, I do, and it's you know, we all want to affect the change and do better for ourselves and do better for our neighbors and our country, and it was just the right time for me to make a difference, and the opportunity came up to step into that you know, area of conflict and apply my trade.
Exactly. Now, I think the people would really enjoy a little bit. We've got another brother on the chat, Baz Evans. So, hey, Baz. Anyways, they might enjoy, because you are a pretty philosophical guy, going into some of the philosophy of contracting. And
well, you know, when it comes to contracting, it's like anything else. You're gonna find yourself having to be the guide for conduct for a team and yourself. And you're involved in irregular warfare, and you have to have your belief systems and your value systems weaponizing you all the time, and you've got to keep that compass straight and push forwards on a number of levels. You're dealing with folks from different countries that don't share your same value systems. That can come into conflict, and you've got to be the best ambassador you can be.
That's exactly right. I always felt that you have to have your stuff directly in line. You have to understand who you are within the team. And you've seen it, I've seen it, ego's out of control, and of course we all jock up, and you know how that makes your ego just go. But you still have to keep the ego somewhat in check. You have to know your business, and if something happens, you have to be able to deal with it. And it's not, I like to think of it like this, and I'm sure you've met these kind of people where they come in with some delusion that they're something they're not. And some of them are good dudes, but they'll learn. But then there's others that, the know-it-alls. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to get into some experiences like that, I think people would enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, when we break it down, I like to go by a few bullet points in my brain, and it's do the work. You have to be able to process your environment. You have to discover those variables in your environment, evolve the situations that you find yourself in, and solve those problems. And that whole time that you're doing that, you have to maintain momentum and prioritize. And when you task stack, it has to be the right way the first time. And then you've got to be able to continue that mission and look for your next opportunities to take advantage of the situation. And people think that it's more than that, and they like to throw their egos in there and play a role. And you've got to really keep focused. Your reality is not some fantasy you've seen on a movie, or you picked up in a book somewhere. You've got to keep your nose to the grindstone and produce.
Oh, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that, brother. One of the interesting things I find is that you'll meet some dudes, and like I said, most of them, 99% of the time, they're decent dudes, but you have experiences that a lot of people don't understand. The situational awareness is totally key, and the job is the client goes home, not necessarily you. And you want to make sure you and your team go home, but the focus is avoiding a fight. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't understand is if you get on the X, and I'll explain that to the people, you get attacked. Your job is to get off that X. It's not to engage in a long-term fight. That's what Big Army and Big Marine is for. That's not what we do. And that's doing PSD work, and you can't necessarily get off the X if you're on a static gig. And I've done everything from, TL, 2IC, window licker, trunk monkey back in the day. And that's PSD work. And then I've been everything from a program manager on down, and you have to take the entire sphere of whatever you do. That's what you're doing. You're not thinking about monkey move up, because that's not your priority. Your priority is the mission. And your thoughts on that?
You've got a binary choice. You've got a binary choice on the ground, and it's very simple. You live or you die by your actions. And you influence those odds with your frame of mind, your tools, and your training. And if those things aren't in line and you don't have your team squared away, it's going to be a bad result.
Always. It's always a bad result. I mean, you've seen it. I've seen it on different things. I know when I first got them, and here's something people don't understand with, like, nowadays, most places that hire you want you to be an employee. You're not actually a contractor in a classical sense. You are not even a subcontractor to the prime, i.e. like working for MPRI, SAIC, or some, Blackwater, it doesn't matter who, DynCorp. But you're working for a company. And back when we both started, that was the days of many splendid dollars. I mean, I was making 17-something a month, 17K something a month. And now they're paying like $3,500 a month. And, is that worth your bacon? Oh, it's a judgment call. But, you and I probably don't step out our door for less than a certain amount of money. We don't need to get into that. But you know what I'm saying. The game has changed. And maybe go back and talk about the different quality of people you've seen from then to now.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at just take the theater of operations in Iraq, 2004, 5, and 6, the kind of folks that were there, you could tell the United States was not prepared to prosecute a war, and they filled the gap with folks that had prior service. A lot of those prior service men and women did not have skill sets to support the mission, and they had to learn those things on the fly. And you saw a lot of cowboy teams put together, and with Bremer's CPA Order 17, that caused quite a bit of issues. When you're not subject to law or UCMJ, it can cause some trouble.
That's definitely a fact. Paul Bremer was, I contend to this day that he was the problem Iraq got out of hand. And your thoughts on him specifically?
Yeah, I mean, great guy that Rumsfeld knew and Bush Jr. trusted, but disbanding the Iraqi army
Yep.
probably was, and he did that. Central to that, that's what created that insurgency.
That
When you have an armed force that is now unemployed, you're going to have that result. They need work. They're going to create work.
Oh yeah, that and getting rid of the police, because I force multiplied for the police during '05 and '06, and working with IPs and training them up, and that's the whole thing. I mean, you're exactly right. I think the Iranians, one of the places I worked besides Baghdad and Mosul was Al Qut. We were 40 kilometers from the Iranian border. And the Quds force was very active and real. And that was a complexion that I know on one hand, I was not ready to go to a Shia-controlled area completely and understand that it's not just the Iraqis I'm going to be dealing with. I'm also dealing with Iranians, and that they had such close ties familially. And I think that was a big wake. I think that was the only thing that really caught me off guard in that conflict.
Yeah, they definitely did. The Marsh Arabs in the south that Saddam hated and tried to actually destroy their complete communities and culture, just fed right into the Iranian influence in that area, and then in Baghdad later on. I just, I'm not sure why we played the hand we did the way we did, especially knowing Iran being a sworn enemy of our nation. I just don't. It's hard for me to wrap my head around why we did what we did in that sense.
It does. It boggles the mind. I mean, but I do say this. On that mission, that was probably the most fulfilling mission I've had ever. Just because, at that time they were saying a quarter of the men that you were training would be killed within the first year. And I stand on stats. And if you believe there was 3 different agencies, I was working for DOJ at that time for the ISATAP contract. And if you believe the stats, 3 agencies that were giving them, and they actually looked at your personal stats on deaths. That was your success and failure rate. And mine were well below the 1/4 mark. So, let alone being the half mark. So, your thoughts?
Well, I worked early on in Iraq. I worked with USAID, and that's where we did quite a bit of our work and support for the mission. And I can tell you, what they created and the chaos they created in the whole country with the irregular warfare. I don't even know how we could calculate the losses on any side accurately.
I agree.
You saw people settling scores. You saw people creating scores. It was a map for trouble, and I just don't. I think back to those days, and if you want to talk about the Wild West, that was it.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly, man. I mean, it was not anything to have some mortar rounds flying in on you anywhere you were at, let alone a V bed. IEDs, those roadside. I think in I want to say mid '05. No, it would have been early '05 was when the EFP threat was really out there, and it was the preferred method besides V beds, because a V bed, a hard car could withstand that. As you know what I'm talking about to a point. It's all
Yeah,
it's all time distance shielding. You know what I'm saying? And it was luck.
Yes.
Honestly, I mean, there was something we used to joke around about that no matter, safety was just, like you said, it was the Wild West. Safety was more nebulous than it was factual. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely. And your decisions and judgments made in the field really impacted what went on. And sometimes, just like you said, luck plays a larger role than people think. And some of us weren't so lucky.
Yep. Hey, I got hit, a couple of times with different things, just never a direct hit. I got a little bit of TBI, some little head things, because that's something a lot of people don't understand is the effects of what happens when any vehicle gets hit with an explosive force. It's whiplash injuries at the least. And, of course, your brain is bouncing around inside that bucket of your skull.
Yeah, I mean, it's bristance, and bristance will come right through any kind of armor you've got, and it's going to impact you. And it's a huge factor in an explosion, and V-beds created quite some havoc.
Yep. And,
I've been directly involved in three different hits on IEDs, and I can tell you it rattles your cage.
Wow, 3 different hits. I think I had one, but I was braking. I could see it coming, if you know what I mean. It was a vehicle from the other side of the road turning around to hit a Hummer, and I started putting the brakes on. And, of course, everything happened that happened. I don't want to get it full on into that story, but the point being was you could feel the heat, and it was like, even though we weren't directly hit, it was like an auto accident. And like I said, it's a little bit of TBI, a little bit of PTSD, which we both understand this as adults, but it's something you work through.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is a lot of people don't discuss these things in a real manner. I guess maybe it's a boring subject, but not to the people that undergo it. And that's kind of the point. So maybe you've had more explosions directly occur to you than I have. I've had the one incident with a V-bed. So, other things have happened. But
let me give you let's talk a little story. I've mentioned this before in different conversations, but June 2010 was my last engagement where I had an IED attack directly on my vehicle. We were running B7 F350s loaded out. Great vehicle. Did the job and kept us alive.
Right.
But in that strike, they detonated just prematurely of our position on the X, and it blew. We had run flat tires, but it blew all the tires out. Literally just shattered the whole vehicle itself. I snapped back too after bouncing my head off the side of the armored car window, and and then here I am, trying to gather myself amongst a complex contact. It just so happens when you talk about luck, there was another military patrol coming through the area, a U.S. patrol. That stopped, secured the area while I got my convoy operation protected and up and got that vehicle back up. It literally took that blast and kept running. I was amazed at that. But my gunner had his eardrums blown out, and my driver, the impact hit him square. I took over driving for him, and it was a mess. But the thing that I want to point out that most people don't think about is when you have something like that, you've got to still push through and accomplish that objective. The last thing I wanted to do after being in that hit was do anything more. I just wanted to stop and quit. And then you realize everyone around you is counting on you, your judgment and your decisions to push that team through to the objective. So I had to sit back and absorb everything that just happened, the injuries included, and still push on to that objective. And I know a lot of guys out there are going to recognize that in a lot of the fights and contacts that they've been in. No matter the struggle you face, no matter the damage or casualties, you've got to push through.
Exactly. It's about your brothers to your left and your right. That's what I think people don't understand is they think we're all looking. Now, there's certain missions we've both probably done where you are looking geopolitically at all the circumstances. But when it comes down to brass tacks, especially on a movement, all the geopolitics, all the little BS goes out the window because it's about getting the job done and being successful at it. And that's where I think perspective is lost. Maybe it's because we're both a little older that maybe with maturity. I mean, I remember thinking this, that, and the other, and you know what goes through your mind when you jock up and you're going out and, you know, psyching yourself up to, honestly, there comes a point, and you probably reached it in 2010, maybe before then, I don't know, but there is a point to where the adrenaline rush and dump, which is pretty much my weirdness that I have, as I enjoy that, and you know what I'm talking about without me really going in depth, but it's not worth it. You're just like, I'm going to find a different way to make my coin. So maybe what was your point to where you thought, let me see where I can branch within the contracting community, if that ever happened to you? Maybe it didn't. Maybe you still enjoy, you know.
It didn't actually. Yeah. You know, I enjoyed the mission. I enjoyed doing the security missions, and it's just who I am. I never veered from wanting to be, you know, in that conflict, in that confrontation, and being on that front. You know, I you know, as much as irregular warfare is a terrible thing, I enjoyed the environment.
Oh, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy the environment. I'm just saying the sustainable damage that you're getting, you know, in all aspects of it. Yeah. I'm not talking about the way you live. I mean, shit, in Afghanistan, I've lived for 45 days with no heat in a tent. That's a reality to it. You know, when they talk austere environment, that's not a joke. I remember having a rat the first time crawl up next to my ankle, and it freaked me out, but my ankle was warm. And then the rest of the time I was there, Mr. Rat visited me every night. It's a story I tell my wife. It's not a joke. And he would sleep on my ankle. And I was like, oh, first day I kicked him off. Next day he comes up, I'm like, oh, my ankle's warm. You know, little things like that nobody thinks about.
No, they don't. And, you know, the first hit I was in, I was injured very severely in 2006. And it took me time to recover. When the doc asked me what my goal was after recovery, I told him, I'm going to go back. You know, this is who I am, and this is what I do. I wouldn't quit. And believe me, my wife was incredibly angry at me. They weren't sure that I was going to be able to walk or talk again from the injuries that I had sustained. And my focus was get back to combat. Literally, the doctor gave me a prescription saying that I had to wear my PPE during my therapy to recover. I did do that, and then I went back to Iraq and then on to Afghanistan after those injuries. You know, you've got drivers inside of us.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, I weaponized my belief system. I weaponized my goals, and my wife and several of my friends helped me recover and get back into that game.
That's something I think nobody gives the firm feeling to, is not feeling, but the understanding that a successful recovery of anything is all about the brothers you served with are the ones that are get you through your problems back home, and having a stable wife and life on the backside also is an encouragement that you can't, and they support whatever decision you make, because taking that decision is going to be, it can be life altering. This is not, the thing about it is, we joke around or whatever and say it's the game, the ultimate game or something, but in actuality, it is actual life and death. And until people's had to stand the line on a life and death, literal death choice, I don't think they actually get it. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, we can all game it until it happens, but reality brings it down to the ground floor for truth. And I've seen guys, I've seen guys that I thought, hey, this guy's going to be a badass. He's going to be who we rely on in a fight. And I've seen those guys just crumble, just fold. And then I've seen guys that, never been in a contact before, but could slow down long enough to reason and then achieve a result. And they were the smallest guy that with the least experience. You just can never tell who's who until that moment happens. And it might not be the same guy every time. Some guys' cups get full. They get to that point where they've been in enough contacts, they've been under enough stress that they just say, "Yep, I'm done." And a week later, they're out of theater.
Oh yeah, they're saying window or aisle. No, I agree with you. There's something that I tell everybody this and they don't want to hear it, but it's actually true. It hasn't happened to me yet. Everybody's going to take a pause for the cause when something first happens. It's just that you're getting your bearings. It's how quickly you snap out of it, and that matters. And like you said, I've seen dudes full on jocked up badasses that, SOCOM dudes that, like you said, their cup's full. They're just like, I'm done with this. And then I've seen dudes that you thought were a complete tosser, and all of a sudden they're fucking right there in the game. And shit, they came out of it even before me sometimes, and I'm pretty quick on it. But that's a whole thing too. The philosophy, I guess, this is where we get a little philosophical, is not just what drives us personally, but the entire atmosphere. It's perspective changing. And I can't really, that's something I have a hard time explaining because I don't know if there's words for it, but if there are, please fill us in.
Yeah, Kaiser, when you start talking about framing what we do, no matter what theater of operations it is in, no matter what client that we're working for, I come back to using a very, very bifurcated framework. I believe that life and reality can be construed between chaos and order.
Yep.
And it's our job to extract order out of chaos.
Yeah.
And, our job isn't just fighting, it's transformation of a situation into order, where we can pull through, keep together, and push on to that objective.
Yeah.
And we're going to confront chaos and extract order out of each encounter that we have. That's our primary job.
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. Like you said, it's a cowboy situation, but even with all the cowboyism, there were certain teams. I can talk about the shark teams that, I worked around. They were DynCorp dudes, and several of those teams were good teams. Unfortunately, they happened to be, I came to a different philosophy. I didn't like just working with Americans. I came because I'm more like the British. I can function within a foreign society really well, as in interacting with them, and I don't feel so like I need to be on base. You remember the Fobbit thing that we used to talk about all the time. The dudes that hung at the fob and didn't want to do anything, but that philosophy, when you'd have a good mix of South Africans, and I experienced that one time on a USAID and then a Democracy International contract afterwards, working for an Afghan company, believe it or not, Watan Risk Management. And I will tell you,
Yeah.
There's a mix that you can have, and I don't know but it's almost like, I don't know, it'll sound corny, but like a 13th Warrior kind of thing. You remember that goofy ass movie? But it is something like that where you get the right men.
Funny you mentioned that. I just watched that movie 2 days ago. So, I worked with a tremendous basket of different nationalities. My mentor, Andy, was a Brit with quite a lengthy service record for MOD in the United Kingdom. And I have to say that he showed me a different way of doing things that made a lot more sense than when I went into theater in Iraq in particular and thought this is how we're going to play the game. I think they're savvy for being able to read a culture and stay more gray man than the American. Has a lot to be said for it.
Oh yeah, the gray man concept. I've touched on that on my channel. I'd love to have you on just to talk about that, because that's something you and I both. My biggest complaint with the way the Americans were doing things was, even in a hard car, low-key car, you knew it was American. You know what I'm saying? And the time we quit getting hit in Al Qut, we actually ponied up the money between us. We bought a snatch van, regular Toyota van you see over there with tinted out. We bought one of those old taxis with the orange fenders, and one of the Hiluxes, an old dirty-ass Hilux. And guess what? We didn't clean them. We didn't do shit to them, and we fit right in. By the time they saw us, you could tell. You learn to read the street. There's either nobody on the street or everybody's throwing hard looks at you. And you knew something was up.
Oh, yeah.
That's just basic. But,
and that's how we define our mission, what's our objective, and then how we approach actually doing it. There's a huge difference. And, sometimes you needed to be porcupined. Sometimes you needed to, you knew you were going to be obvious. You needed those windows rolled down. You needed to, have your gunners in place, and they're taking care of their areas of responsibility. It was like that. And it was interesting to see that develop from contacts every day in 2004, 5, and 6 into 7 in the surge. But seeing all that go on like that, and then at the other end, where my last 2 years in Iraq were 2009, 9, 10, and I can tell you the difference in approach to doing missions, and the legalities and the structure that we had to work within. It went from too much chaos in the beginning to way too much order in I don't even know what to say, bureaucracy, I guess, in the end.
Oh,
I'll never forget the change. Drastic.
You're exactly right. The ROEs became retarded. The one good thing with the contract I was on was they said, use your judgment that your agency, your last agency had for, like, let's say you had to do something lethal or less than lethal. That was the one thing good about the ISATAP contract, was that you just had a guideline. Whereas a lot of the stuff with you'd get your intelligence summaries and stuff like that to break down. And that's another thing too, is the man on the ground, nothing beat real-time intel from a team coming back. And if you're leaving.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Because there's always that. I like to call
it. I don't know how much you. I don't know how much you rode the roads in Iraq in 2010, but I can tell you there were between Mosul and Baghdad proper 46 checkpoints, and half of them wanted to stop your vehicle, have you open the door, and show them your paperwork. So a mission that should have took 5 hours took 2 days.
Oh, I believe it. I totally believe
stupid.
It. I totally believe it because
I just unbelievable.
No, I totally believe it because '09 and part of 2010, I was in Iraq, and it was all fostered because of weak leadership on our part, not the contractor part, but now we're getting geopolitical of the American leadership, and you saw it getting soiled down, and also ROEs that were just untenable. I remember when dash cams first started getting used, and it was just a way to document.
Yep.
And by the time I was in Afghanistan again, what was that, 2011, 2012, I remember they had cams. We're talking ODA's vehicles. Every gun had a cam on it. And it was,
Yep.
and you had to directly upload. You'd go to where we had a PGIS balloon. You'd go to their section and download all the memory from all the cameras for somebody at the Pentagon to make a decision on something if something happened. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was out of control, and that that kind of environment, that kind of activity makes the men on the ground second guess themselves, and that's a danger in itself. That hesitation, instead of making a decision and acting, I honestly think it's almost criminal.
Oh, I believe that it is criminal. I think everybody who had a hand in that, because there's something a lot of people talk about with like 9/11 and stuff, but they fail to realize we had 8 years of Bill Clinton before 9/11 happened, and Jamie Gorelick, you remember that bitch? She erected the Gorelick Wall.
Yeah.
And so Intel could not communicate with law enforcement here in the U.S. Well, of course, the workaround was starting Homeland. Well, that's fine and good, but then when we had the last occupant, I don't ever use his name because of just my thoughts on him, because it's a rabbit hole I don't like to go down. Okay. But with him, Gorelick came back in and re-erected the damn wall. So I mean, behind it, huh?
No, I just I think about when you talk about private military contracting and the environment that we worked in legally and operationally. There were two very defining moments, and the change between the two of them in our business was huge. The first was the Blackwater contractors being killed in Fallujah.
Yep.
We all know that story well, and the tragedy. But then the right after that, you started to see the words hate trucks come out.
Yep.
And then the trunk monkeys really had meaning in those days.
Oh, yeah.
And then you had the Furtis Square incident with Blackwater on the other end, where everybody in that square, you would have thought because of the sensationalization, 3,000 people died in a traffic square, and it's all Blackwater's fault, which right. I don't believe in the least. And it was used as a political lever to create massive trouble in our industry. And it still has impacts today.
Oh, definitely. The whole Square incident, I'll get into that a little bit. The thing that gets me about that entire thing, and they did it with every group. State Department's the worst. I'm sure you've worked for them. I will never work for State Department for a reason. Anyways,
I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, my point being was they'll switch companies, like they change underwear, and if you go on a State Department mission, the actual DSS agents that are in the convoy, they are the ones that tell you to shoot or not, unless it's something imminent, an imminent threat, right? And on that situation, they had time, yeah. They had plenty of time to take a decision, and it had to be the DSS that said, okay, clear the path. It just had to be. There's nothing else that makes sense. And then once they did it, that was the hammer used to change companies. And the ridiculousness is they just change companies, but they hire in place. So everybody that was already there, guess what? They're just moving to this other company. So it creates a bureaucratic and a situation.
Someone else's paycheck.
Exactly. Exactly. They're just shifting where they want their money to go, and usually it's to their own fucking cronies. So that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, and it's tough. No, I agree with you, and and that's the business side of things, and anytime you're working with an alphabet soup crew, agency in our government, I just the bureaucracy is so huge. At the end of the day, most of the time you see poor decisions, and it's a bad thing. It's a very bad thing. But the future for PMC work is there. I think that as much as the military presently wants to get back to being able to manage conventional threats, 4GW is here to stay.
Yep.
And I think we're going to have smoldering conflict into the future, like we've never seen before. These brush fire wars, weaponizing immigration,
yep.
We're going to see a tremendous amount of stuff go on. Actually, they're coming out now saying here in the States that they're concerned about the Somali population in the Minnesota, Michigan area, being a huge recruitment area for terror. And who didn't see that coming?
It has been, I can tell you this, it has been, I know, since 2003. And it's not just that. It's not just the Somalians. When you have a disparate culture, we're not talking about somebody like Jamie Farr, who was Corporal Klinger, that was Lebanese, right? We're not talking about that, where they assimilated, right? And became another American. No, what we're talking about are people that refuse. I can tell you this, because Ohio got hit with 60,000 Somalians. All of a sudden, Columbus, Ohio did. And that was during Bill Clinton's after his first election. Okay? All these quote-unquote refugees, they failed to assimilate, they refused to assimilate, and they even kept their own clan culture and customs. And it's one of those things that all you're going to do, I'll give you an example. The high school I went to back when I was young, we had the Brobillies and the Hillbillies. That's what we used to call ourselves. But we were all, West Siders. And we got along. Yeah, there'd be fights, but they were after-school fights. Normal kind of kid shit. When I became a federal cop, when I came back to the U.S. and started working in the U.S. again, I was in there talking to one of my old teachers. And just joking with him one day because I happened to be in that area and I had a couple, it was a lunch hour. And I was like, hey, I'm going to go say hi to him. And like a week before, there was a riot in the school. And I'm like, well, what went on? I'm just trying to figure out the hype from the news. And he goes, well, you know how it is here. You got the Brobillies and the Hillbillies. And all of a sudden we got all these Somalians that came in here and Mexico. That was another thing. We started getting a lot of Mexicans. And he said, next thing you know, they're talking bad about the U.S. And he said, all the Brobillies and Hillbillies, it was amazing. They all got together, and the riot was on in the cafeteria over it. He said it was the biggest fight we've ever had in this school. So, there is something about Americans once they've assimilated and decided to become Americans. And if you're not going to do that, that's the problem with our immigration system. Is they look at the ancillary, but they don't look at the real impact. What is it doing to communities? And that needs to be taken into account. Yeah. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Matter of fact, that article was on MSN.com. Yeah, that article I meant, that I'm referring to earlier was on MSN.com, and the title was FBI, we have a terror recruiting problem in Minnesota. I mean, that was just yesterday.
Nice.
I don't, when folks come here from these other cultures and they assimilate, gosh, there's I have a friend whose wife joined the Marine Corps and she's Iraqi.
Right.
And, she's got a great career and she's serving this country. And I couldn't be prouder of seeing some of these folks come from these other countries and assimilate and do us all right and be Americans. But a lot of them are coming here retaining the trappings of their old culture, their own optical lenses, their own cognitive biases from those cultures and experiences, and it's hard for them to untether from them, and then applying them here as opportunists. And it's dangerous. It's incredibly dangerous. It's a massive problem for the future, but part of 4GW warfare. That irregular flight is at our doorstep. It's not even. It's not something that's in some far off distant land like you and I've worked in.
Oh, I agree on that. That's the whole thing that blows my mind. I don't know about where you live or anything like that, but I can tell you where I live, and I've seen self-ghettoization of communities. So everything, quote unquote, in 65 that, all the move forward of our culture, right? The American culture, moving past things. Now they're talking about actually trying to have just madrasas for certain areas because it's so heavily populated with Muslims. And that's, and the whole Muslim paradigm that it's racist to talk about. No, it's not, because it's a religion. So when people say you're racist, I just laugh. I'm saying, no, call me a religionist, because it's not just a religion. It's a political thought, and it's also a way of warfare. Judicial thought. It's all of that encompassing. Your thoughts?
And let me connect this, at least how I think about, the threat that we face from 4GW warfare, how private military contracting fits into that with my experiences and what we're even seeing here today in the United States.
Right.
We're all human beings. To extract order from chaos, we're all looking for frameworks to put our actions in.
Right.
So we're looking at building axioms, creeds, tenets, faiths, doctrines, scripture, convictions, rules and laws, ideologies, and dogmas.
Right.
All those things are frameworks for action.
Right.
And when we go to another culture in Iraq and Afghanistan, we adapt and are able to influence those frameworks with our presence and work within them. It seems that they're trying to do the reverse, coming right into our country here in the United States and doing the same. They're not adapting to our framework, but bringing their scriptures, their convictions, their rules, their laws, their dogmas and doctrines, and trying to reshape our country and our system of governance. And we're seeing that. It's just an interesting parallel between what we've done as PMCs and what we're seeing about the immigration issue here in the United States.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you. Look, my last agency I worked for, after I'd gotten out and did my first contract, my mother was dying, so I just was able to shift into a federal agency again and finish my time out for, I don't know, a year or whatever it was. But the point being is, it was with Immigration and Customs at CBP in Detroit field office. And I lived in a place where Ford had its museum and everything. Well, I guess I'm giving everything away. Everybody knows where I'm talking about. But the whole thing about it is, it was Kroger's written in English and Arabic. Just craziness everywhere. Yep. Muslim festival. If you went to that little festival to enjoy falafel or whatever you wanted to eat, you were going to have some issues. And it's just craziness, man. I mean, it is about, immigration has been weaponized, in my opinion. And I don't know what you think about it, but I truly believe that immigration has become weaponized. And not for the good either. I think.
Well, I think there's a huge name in 4GW warfare, William S. Lind, and he's wrote about that exact thing. That unchecked immigration becomes an invasion. Yes. It is an army, and is well underway in the United States. And if we go back to the 1648 and the Peace of Westphalia, which basically outlines from that point forwards, from what happened there, outlines how sovereign nations operate.
Yep.
The two big things being that we control our own domestic affairs, and two, we have borders that we protect. When we don't protect the borders, then our domestic affairs become confused. So it erodes the nation-state model to allow unchecked immigration. I don't think immigration is a terrible thing at all, but I think it has to be controlled and measured. Other countries don't just let that happen. I'm not sure why we're letting it happen here, but I got to tell you, it's going to have a huge impact, and it has, from ideas in policy and in politics to daily life and in places just like you live. It makes a huge difference. And when people aren't coming here and immigrating and seeking out the patterns and structures provided by the country they're living in, but supplanting them with their own, that weaponizes the system against itself. And those beliefs and values now are guides for action in direct conflict with our founding documents. So it's quite an interesting play that's going on, and I think it also underlines that threats aren't all kinetic. The most dangerous threats are non-kinetic.
Right.
What people believe and the patterns and the knowledges and the beliefs and values they have equip them to prosecute warfare itself through their present and future actions.
Oh yeah, it's just like any religion, and I can even point it out. First, I'll backtrack back to the Treaty of Westphalia. It was common for people like you and I to make our living doing what we do. That was the normal state of affairs. There was no national armies. You raised a militia. You raised a force for a problem that was local or maybe national, but there was a pecking order on how to raise that. And it wasn't until that treaty that we started being looked upon as something less than. And which, whatever, it is what it is, but it also started the process of nancification, meaning feminizing our men. And that's my belief, because every man knew he could be called up to go and grab a pike, grab a sword, or an axe, and defend his nation and his state, small s or big S. And that's one of those little things that I think has diluted. And your thoughts on that, and then I'll work back around to that other point.
Well, we're a nation of how many people? 316 million plus.
Mm-hmm.
If we just look at the United States, how many of that 316 million are in any kind of federal or local or state, service where they actually have to put their lives on the line? I mean, less than 1% or 1%.
I'd say less than.
And so you're looking at exactly, and so you're looking at I don't even know what to say. I mean, when 98% of your culture has nothing to do with, the potential politics and the outcomes of politics on a world stage or domestic stage, when it comes to having to utilize force, that ability to have 98% of your population have force, conducted for them by proxy, makes them not think that they need it. Makes them think that they're not participants in those actions and judgment, and it's dangerous because they're unhinged from the consequences or understanding the consequences of the use of force to extract order from chaos.
Yes, and we see that specifically within the entire social justice warrior movement. We've become so that thin veil that thin veil of civility is, I say it's so thin that a breath can vaporize it, okay? And when you have people making problems out of something that's not a problem, then that's the real problem. When everybody's a Nazi, nobody's a Nazi. And there's just so much that I see that's so ridiculous. And I do trace it back to that treaty. And it's taken centuries, but it's true and it's happened. And so your thoughts, brother?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't even know if I can capture any more on it. I just know that right now, you know, whether it's being a private military contractor and how that whole world is transforming versus being a citizen in my own country, where we're at a point of not knowing what our identities are, almost by choice, and or protecting our identities almost by choice. And we've got to be able to maintain a belief structure and a system for social order that has a reasonable guide for conduct. And we've seemed to continue to move away from having that. And we're going to be carrying a burden for it and suffering appropriately for it. And I hate to say it, but that's our future now.
Well, you're exactly correct on that. I mean, the future is what we're living. And as you stated, the future is now. You see a lot of things that are, look, I don't think they went, I think they actually went fast forward on something that they shouldn't have. And that's my 2 cents on that one, is because they hit the fast forward. Look, they wouldn't have done it during the World War II generation. They wouldn't have done it during the Korean War generation or the Vietnam War generation. They had to do it when there were fewer men who have stood the line. And with that, they were able to try to, I belong to the American Legion and the VFW, right? And the American Legion, the good part about that organization is that they understand our mission as Americans and as soldiers, just like you said earlier about every man's an ambassador. I agree with that. That was inculcated to me in the Marine Corps under General Alfred Gray. And he said every Marine's is a ambassador to the U.S. You have to conduct yourself as such. And when I see this whole thing happening where they're able to do it now because they've kept the numbers short, kept them small. And then you get these, well, I like to call them freak shows, but, you know, the guys who have this sticky, wet, masturbational fantasy of civil war, and they don't realize, like you said earlier, we both understand this. The safest place you can be is an invader in a nation, because for the first 6 months, is because what's going on is everybody's retribution killing for slights, real or imagined.
Yeah.
And do you want your family to live like that? No. You know, your thoughts on that. We can expand on that.
You know, I worked, I have to say it was amazing to watch the diaspora in Iraq of Sunnis to the Anbar province and north out of Baghdad, and watching the Marsh Arabs from the south and the Shias move into Baghdad.
Right.
There was a period of time when I was operating on the roads out there that you would see people walking, everything piled from their house, lashed to the vehicles, and for weeks and weeks, people moving from one area out and one area in.
Yep.
And I'll never forget seeing that. And it affected me. It made me truly think about what are our values and how we order ourselves in our society. Because that diaspora, I think, is happening here quietly again. I consider myself, Kaiser, a political refugee from the Northeast. I moved out of Pennsylvania in particular to the Southwest here because of the encroachment on my freedoms.
Right.
My wife was in the same boat. We both did the decision to move out here. I wonder how many more people are making that same trek because of politics instead of greater lifestyle and opportunity that my wife and I have.
Right.
I'm seeing more people here where I'm at from California, New York State, and New Jersey than ever before. So I'm seeing a huge diaspora happen. And when things get stretched as they have, we're going to see more of it.
Oh, I agree. But the problem with that, especially from those areas, is they bring their politics with them. And so the safety, I love the Southwest. I love the Southwest, but the problem is the coastal elites and everybody who lives in the coast believe they know a lot more than you and I do. It's really great when I talk to somebody intellectual or something, and of course they assume that I've never went to college, and I like that actually. There was a great mentor of mine, and that's something I want to touch on with you too, is mentorism and why it's a good thing. But because I believe every man, I'm a bastard. Without having mentors, I wouldn't be the man I am today. I'd be some, mama's boy. That's my opinion. And I'm the foremost expert only on one thing.
I share
my
that
opinion.
I share that same.
Yep. Go on.
Yeah, I share that same history for you. It's the mentors that I've had along my journey that has created who I am today.
Right.
And I've been fortunate to have some great people in my life.
Well, it's the only way. I mean, a father, now I'm a father, right? And my father's grown and doing his thing in the military. Love it. He's now starting to figure out, his thing. And hopefully I don't ask him. It's not my business. If he's got a mentor, that's good. But there's only so much a father, and I did a lot with him, a lot more than some, less than others. I'll say it like that. But the interesting thing is I didn't have that, but I'm sure he's found mentors, because just like good mentors, and I have had awesome mentors, and guess what they all say? If I feel I can't give you anything more, you can always come back, but I will tell you, hey, and when I mentor people, I say the same thing. I'll tell you, hey, man, go find somebody else, and, door's still always going to be open. And if you feel you're not getting anything from me, I'm not going to be ass hurt if you go find another mentor. Get another one. Because mentors are only there to guide you on your journey. Everybody has a journey. I don't care what it is. Find your journey. Find what drives you. That's success, in my opinion. And I think you don't get that without good mentorism.
Yeah, I think you struck on an important point when you're talking about journey. Let me encapsulate it this way: we inhabit our own narrative, and in that narrative, we're our own hero. And this is something that you guys can look up, folks. Your listenership here, look up the hero's journey, and you'll see that process carried out, and what's known as the hero's journey. Through stories that you enjoy, history and stories throughout history, time and time again. And what you see in the hero's journey is I think three specific factors. And once not to kill the whole or talk about that, could be its own podcast about the hero's journey. But three specific things that jump out at me when it comes to mentorship and it's in being on your own path. We're looking to, once again, from chaos bring stability.
Right.
We're looking to encounter novelty and anomaly and adapt to it.
Right.
And we want to take and make the unknown known.
Right.
And it's those three things that are central to every one of us in our own hero's journey. And that in our journey is what gives life its purpose,
right,
and meaning. And we need to identify with that. and start looking and framing and examining our lives, because the most, something that's very important to know is we're not transparent to ourselves. So it's good to use a framework to take a look at who we are and seek out the patterns and structures that we operate in, so we can better understand ourselves and how to interact with the environment that we have. And like I'm glad you mentioned the journey, the hero's journey, because it's important. It's central to every one of our lives.
It's life changing and life effacing. Look, here's something that really boggles the mind. A lot of people hide their warts. I'm not that guy. I discovered a long time ago, back during the Cold War, when I first started my service, first with the Army, and then I went into the Marine Corps in '88. The people I didn't trust the most were the guys that hid shit. And it opens you up to blackmail and all kinds of things. There's reason why certain things are covered in the UCMJ, like adultery and homosexuality. And it's because you're blackmailable.
Right.
But like my biggest lessons, and people say this all the time, but I mean it. I mean, I framed in the Marine Corps, I got busted down. I was going to be promoted to corporal, and they ripped that up in my face the day after my wet down because of what I did. And then they took what was on my shoulder. And honestly, I framed it from Lieutenant Colonel Clifton, 3rd FSSG. Good on you. You know why? Because he called me on my bullshit. You need a sounding board. And the problem is sometimes people who are, there's a difference between leadership like NCO leadership, okay? There is a difference from a non-commissioned officer thinking he's mentoring you when he's talking to everybody. He's got X amount of people he has to deal with, right? You're not getting that one-on-one time. A mentor is one-on-one. Right. But they'll always confuse themselves and say it's mentoring. It's not. And that guy, the mentor, will call you out. An NCO will call you out after the fact, or an officer, an 06 if you're an 01 or an 02. You understand my meaning here. They're going to call you out because now it's an issue. A good mentor will be the sounding board to prevent that issue. Does that make sense?
Yes, and if we're talking about mentors now, my thoughts are this on it, and I'm broad brushstroking here. Mentors allow us to have a sounding board, like you mentioned, for our psychological and decision action pathways.
Right.
The mentors help us, accept adversity, carry our burdens well, and suffer appropriately.
Right.
And I mean suffer.
Yes.
And you learn things through having those most teachable moments, like you had with your a demotion. Yeah. It allows you to explore and play with the systems that drive you.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that opportunity to explore and play with the systems that drive you, you make more mistakes.
Oh, I agree. You have to have the suffering. I guess my point is, I guess it's larger than that even. They will let you make the mistakes, but I mean, if a good mentor, if he sees something, and of course you don't have to listen.
A good mentor.
And
a good mentor helps you find your optimal load.
Yes.
And that's an important point.
Yes.
And so when you're mentoring, if you're mentoring your team, if you're in a PMC, no matter what your job is, you're looking to find and extract from every one of your team members an optimal load.
Yes.
So, you're going to push yourself to the thin edge where meaning lies, and help them push to that edge as well. So you guys are all able to act well in the field and make good judgments and decisions under stress. And at least that's been my experience with personally mentoring, a team and a group. So you're looking to try to help people, carry their burden and find that optimal load. And in that process, suffering is leveraged towards learning.
I love what you just said earlier, to find your meaning. that is the key to, I guess,
Yeah.
mentoring that I didn't think of putting it that way. Your phraseology is always much better than mine, but that is what it is, to find your meaning. And that's another thing, to find truth. Define and to find truth, because truth is a nebulous thing. And I think that's another thing that a good mentor will do, is not tell you what the truth is, but give you the avenue to discern it correctly with critical thinking. Your thoughts on that, maybe?
Yeah, if you're a warrior, you're a PMC, you're active in your community at home, you're a good father. What you're trying to do is actively apprehend a goal, your goals of behavior, and you have to seek the truth and embody the truth to do that. And like you said, it can be a nebulous thing, but I'm going to draw it right back into what I've said before. Order and chaos
Yep.
produce that a struggle, and in that struggle, that struggle leads to meaning and focus, and you develop truth out of that meaning and focus.
Yep.
And if that makes sense to you, I can say as well in one simple statement what it's about, and that's good and evil in confrontation produces wisdom. You have to face everything that you do and help others face everything that they do with their eyes open, their wits sharp, and their words and their weapons at the ready.
Oh,
It has to be that way.
I agree.
Um,
I agree wholeheartedly. That
so, our ability to confront the chaos in our lives and the unknown and produce a result, a valent result that is good, and truth is a part of that, it's central. It's central to what we do. It gives us the meaning and focus to drive and have motive. And that honestly is all the difference in accomplishing a mission. After having a huge contact, why do we just not give up and go home? Well, it's because of those meanings and those truths that we're seeking, that desired end state, that behavior that matters.
And it is the end state that yes, the behavior and the end state that you wish to achieve. There's something that, I'll give you an example of something. I was talking to a brother. I love the brother. We disagree on this one thing, but you'll understand my definition of an oath. And there's certain things that I think on an oath. And I'm going to give two wild examples and the difference between why I can respect one slightly and I can respect another one slightly too, but for different reasons. One, and they're both far out examples, so please give me wide berth on this. One is when you had the gentleman who came out and outed Prism. Because he did that, I don't want to get into names. Well, I guess I'm going to have to. But anyways, everybody knows who I'm talking about. He outs Prism and then runs to China and then to Russia, okay? He did a good thing because that should have been public, at least within America, right? That should never have been held back, that they had turned the cameras and the listening devices inward instead of keeping them outward, which is by their charter, what they were supposed to do, to keep America safe from outward threats. But instead they turned it into a Stasi type thing. So when Snowden did that, that's a good thing. But there was an appropriate manner he could have done that in. Instead, he did it and ran to China and gets no retribution at all. He basically has free reign and gets no punishment, right? Really. He just loses America. That's it. The other one, I respect him.
Well,
to put a fine line on him, I respect him for outing that, but I disrespect him, and he has no oath and honor that he maintained because he ran away. Now, Bradley Manning, the guy didn't understand what I was talking about when he cost more lives. What I meant was he cost more American lives by what he did, by feeding the propaganda of the Iraqis and the Muslims in that area by outing that stuff. But he took his punishment. So he violated his oath, but I can respect that he at least stayed to take his punishment. But that doesn't mean that either of them aren't oath breakers. They are. And that fine line, a lot of people don't understand. Honor lives by keeping your oath. While you are existing under that oath, it is your duty to keep that oath sacred and holy, just like your marriage. But if you go outside the area,
you've
okay.
Yeah, I mean, if I can interject,
Yes, please.
Honor and duty are massive components of character,
Right?
And that is one thing that we have a massive problem again in the United States about defining who we are in our character. We have to keep in mind that when we sense make, it leads to action.
Right.
Thoughts become words, words become deeds. Deeds repeated often enough become our character.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, your deeds are your duties.
Yep.
And when we step away from that, lose our aim, we lose what I would consider right action, and we encourage chaos. And that's what those two guys did.
Yeah.
By not staying within their bounds of duty, they've created chaos, and the outcome's been some enlightening to some, but then damaging, far more damaging than they could calculate.
Yes.
And I don't think either of the two of those parties that you mentioned even had a thought as to what the second and third order of effects would be for what they're doing.
No, I agree.
I don't think they had a clue.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. My point was I could respect one for an action, but he did it improperly, and totally disrespect him because he didn't face ramifications. He caused that. The other one, by doing that, actually put American lives at risk. And when I hear somebody saying they did something heroic, which was the conversation, and it deserved to be outed, it saved lives. No, what it caused was a tightening of ROEs, which caused more allies and Americans to die. And then all of a sudden you come up with a program, instead of it being purpose-built hits to take somebody out who's a bad actor, and it's a defined target. No, what you get is the idiot decides, the idiot in chief, the last occupant of 1600, said, I'm pretty good at killing people, because he's using drone strikes and killing family lines. That's an issue. It caused more death. It didn't stop death. It caused more, because then all of a sudden we have to look at what we're doing. Yeah, okay, so we're just going to make it some dude that out there in whatever state, I'm not going to mention the states that they do it in, flying a drone and hitting somebody over in a far-off land. But that somebody is going to take down the entire building and kill everybody in that house. So, yeah, I don't think it worked out quite the way that they wanted it to. My dog's got to go out, so please expand why I do that. All right, brother?
Yeah, not a problem at all. I think that we've got to hinge back to beliefs are a guide for conduct, and we've got to have very well defined boundaries for those beliefs and those frameworks that we act in. And you've got to examine the convictions and the ideologies, the traditions and the rules and laws that you operate under. We have to be able to acquire and maintain perceptions of meaning in a chaotic world. We also have to maintain our ability to organize with each other and not come into conflict with that. And your two examples, Kaiser, really show what it means to have second and third order effects of making a wrong decision. No matter how altruistic it may on the surface look like, it has impacts that people can't calculate, and it costs lives. So the beliefs that we hold and the actions that we take have incredible impact on each other, and on not only on our as individuals, but as a collective. And beliefs weaponize us, and when we take action on those beliefs, it can be deadly, and we see that time and again. We've got to remember that between stimulus and response is where the magic happens.
Yep.
We sense make, and we have to be able to critically slow down, self-regulate, and look for portals of insight before we act. And if we don't do that, we're going to take and manage and weigh risks improperly.
Yep.
And when you're in the field or making a decision about outing something when you shouldn't, that's a ripple effect. You're going to have your actions are going to have a massive impact on culture, on how people operate, and on their very lives.
Oh, I agree. I mean, there's something. One time I said, and it meant nothing to me, and I didn't think it meant anything to anybody else, but it caused a brother, because it gave him a flashback to ventilate his cranium, and that's something that's real. So,
Yep.
But but still I own that. That's something. That's the thing. Sometimes ramifications, and in all honesty, to myself, maybe not to you, maybe not to him, whatever, maybe not to other people, but it besmirches my honor. And because I didn't have the thought process to step back and say, people, somebody might want to know about this, and it caused somebody to have a bad day. And, it is what it is. I mean, everybody's guilty of doing something sometime. What's that book, 3 Felonies a Day? But the point being is, what's more important is to live by the code. Code is law. I love how the computer industry, just like everything, steals from our community. Asset stripping, all those different terminologies they use in business, and code is law. Well, code is law is your code of honor is the law, period. And there's something I got a question.
I agree.
I got a question for you. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but my wife got me binge watching this thing because she discovered it, I don't know, a couple months back, whenever I posted stuff about it. But it's a TV series that we ended up buying DVDs on called Game of Thrones, right? And there's a part in it where...
I've watched a few scenes.
Okay, there's a part of it where the guy is stating the man who passes the sentence must be the man who delivers the sentence, looks you in the eye. And that pretty much goes with code is law. That's a part of what we do, and that's the thing. You live with the ramifications. If you can't look the man in the eye that you're about to do something with, it's an issue to me. The man should swing the sword who passes the judgment, basically.
I understand it, and that's part of that's once again, if you look at the what's your outcome, what's your goals for behavior. If you have conviction and you're right thinking, and you're holding to the tenets that everybody's subscribed to, then that is exactly how it should be.
I agree wholeheartedly, brother. It just boggles the mind. I don't know. For some reason, I'll tell you this. I will tell you this. The older men, gentlemen in America, when I was young, in the late 60s and 70s, they knew that, and they inculcated it into us, the difference between right and wrong and good and evil. And somehow we've gotten that blended, mixed up into some Slurpee that makes no sense. And I don't know. I think modernity caused a lot of that. The shifting of focus about family and your community, because honestly, with modernity, we're using social media now, and you and I use it a lot. But the thing about it is, social media has made it a way that there's no real ramifications for words or statements. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, what has electronic media and social media done for us? It's created a platform for people to exchange data, not useful information.
Right.
And that's what we need to get back to, is sharing in a useful manner with each other, lessons that matter,
Right.
life lessons that matter. And we don't always do that. We just have information out there that we all look at as we scroll through our Facebook page or whatever, and it's not meaningful time spent. And it's that ability to extract meaning from what you're doing matters. You have to produce something. You should engage in has to have merit. And a lot of times, all we have today is entertainment and distraction. We've walked away from, developing skills in sense making, critical judgment. We're not thinking critically anymore. The must do's that I see that we have to do daily is critically think, manage ambiguity, and keep aim and intent. Those three things we have to do in our OODA loop every single day. And we don't. We just want a distraction. We want comfort. We want data to look at. And we're not evolving. We're not growing our character by doing that. We're not maintaining momentum in our lives. We're stalling out. And we're stalling out as a culture through it as well.
The entire West is. It's first off, there's people that aren't military on my channel, or police or fire or anything. The OODA loop is just nothing more than observe, orient, decide, and act. I do want to get involved in that too. I want to get to that here in a second. But my point being is, I agree with you totally that those three principles are key. And that is something that's missing. But I think the mooring anchor to those three is final responsibility. Would you disagree? Accountability. There we go.
Responsibility, accountability.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have to be accountable for your actions. 100%.
Exactly. Everything I've done, I do out in the open. I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not wearing a hoodie. I'm not trying to disguise myself. I'm there, feet. I do it live on both feet, just like you do, brother. And guess what? If the situation's bad and I'm there, I have no problem with somebody saying, "What's up?" You see what I'm saying?
Well, I look. Let me add to that, and about accountability and responsibility. Your beliefs give velocity to your behavior. Your behaviors are actions that shape life.
Yes.
And you have to know your responsibilities and orient your values in what you do daily.
Right.
That has to happen. Look, warfare is simply survival, and survival is what we do every day.
Yep.
And it starts with your beliefs. And velocity isn't speed, it's speed and direction.
Yep.
And that's what your behavior is. You're acting. And you have to have that developed. your solutions every day that you provide for yourself emerge from a judicious study of discernible reality.
Yes.
But we connect it to our beliefs. We act on our beliefs. So you've got to be able to bridge discernible reality and connect your beliefs as well. And that's going to produce insight and accountability as well.
See, folks, that's why I brought Shawn on, because Shawn thinks in ways I think in, but he is way more articulate and an awesome dude. Now, let's get into the OODA loop, because we can spend some time on this, because it's something that it actually is something everybody does every day, all the time. And they just don't know what it means. So if you could flesh that out in a more articulate manner than I know I could do, I'd appreciate it.
OODA loop again is observe, orient, decide, and act. That's a very popular trope almost in our field, in the military and law enforcement fields anymore. And it has to do with how our brains process information and turn information into meaning into action through orienting, deciding, and acting. And Colonel Boyd was the
John Boyd, yeah,
surmised the whole OODA loop itself. He was a fighter. Yeah, John Boyd. He was a fighter pilot, and that's where he found success in his field, was being able to see facts faster, to be able to do faster. But before you can do, you have to see, and that's an incredibly critical component to what we do every day, is sense make. And, I'd mentioned sense making before, and that's really where it comes down to. Your efficient sense making of your environment allows you to put right action into place. And that takes having threat recognition skills, profiling skills, being able to dynamically assess risk and study your environment for baselines and anomalies.
Yep.
And, that's all connected to the OODA. And we go through thousands and thousands of OODA loops a day.
Yep.
That decision-making process is at the base of what we do.
Just as human beings. I mean, it's not a matter of, you go to the grocery store, you're going to observe something. Let's say we're looking at Italian dressing. Okay, we're observing. We're orienting to our preferred one. But maybe there's another brand. So we're going to decide between those two, and then we're going to act by placing it into the bass cart, shopping cart, whatever you want to call it, and then going through the checkout. It's that simple, folks. It's just like a SMEAC, how I was taught to do that and other things. You can bring
situation.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's the way.
Yep.
You can basically boil. I'll give you another good one. This is a more funny one. You'll enjoy this one. This was in the Army when I first heard this. It was a salute report. Size, activity, location.
Yeah.
And he's just like, yeah, you're going to a party. How big's the party going to be? The size, the location. Where's it going to be at? Going to be at whatever. And then. So you're now looking at the unit, or the location, the unit,
right?
And the unit is how many girls, how many boys, right? And then the time. What time does the party start, right? What time's it going to end? And then the equipment. What equipment are you going to need? You're going to need condoms or beer. See what I'm saying? It's that basic, folks. And it really is. Okay.
Let me, Kaiser. Let me push this back to once again a kind of a larger framework.
Okay.
It's all about behavior and outcomes.
Right.
It's all about behavior and outcomes. You got to be able to see the outcomes you're trying to achieve, and
yes,
you've got to be able to look and say, everyone has a nervous system and 5 senses and a brain that moves them.
Yes.
And it all comes down to how do they efficiently move through that loop and behave.
Yeah.
And behaving, part of that's orient, And we've been talking about belief systems, and
Yep.
that is part of that charting and mapping and guiding for action.
Right.
Is the orientation phase, where we plug our lens of experiences and beliefs into that action loop.
Yes.
And then the decision action comes out, and we manage the result.
Exactly. You're exactly right, man. I was just trying to break it down to a baser element, man. But that's why I say I'm having you on, because you
Good. Good.
bring it to the macro and to the micro, whereas I'll just take it to the micro and try to explain it super basic. That, you know, I don't know why I do that. It just it's a way I was trained, and it's silly, but you bring it into focus more tightly, and also from a distance, from that 35,000 foot level, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's because, you know, when you start looking at how did I survive? You know,
Right.
how did you survive?
Right.
How did people survive in a combat environment? Look, you know, I sat there and counted up at one point how many months I spent in the red zone.
Right.
98 months total.
Right.
Red zone. And that's being out there every day, facing risks,
Yep.
dynamically assessing, and getting my team and myself through problems and solving things. And the only way you do that is through truly looking at human nature and behavior.
Yep.
And understanding what we are as an animal, and then what we are as a cultural artifact of where we're from.
Yes.
And it brings it into scope how it all works together.
You're exactly correct. I can't disagree with you at all on that, because in the end, we're all mammals. You know, that's just what's going to happen. So now I'm going to take a quick break. You might want to too. And I'll be playing a song on the intermittent time. Of course, all my songs come from one place. And that place happens to be Axion's Ghost. He allows me to use it. And this is, since we're taking a break on this one, Axe marks the spot. And here you guys go. Enjoy while we take this break. It's about 2 minutes and 51 seconds long, brother.
Right on.
As I wait for it to load. And I guess it's not going to load. So take a break if you need to, brother, because it's not loading yet. And I'll just talk. I don't know why it's doing this, but whatever.
Roger that. I'll take a break here.
All right.
I'm gonna just unplug for about a minute.
No problem. No problem. So, folks, as you're seeing, that's the reason why I have Shawn on, is because Shawn is breaking stuff down that I think you guys would be interested in. So, hi, Ivy. Good that you're on. Nice seeing you. Haven't seen you in a while. Hopefully you guys are all getting something out of this. That's kind of the point. And we're going to keep doing this for a little while longer. And then I'll close everything out when it's all done. But for some reason, let's see if it plays now.
I'm back, just so you know.
Hey, folks, that was Axion's Ghost. Axe marks the spot. I know Shawn's back, and we're ready to roll. So, how's everything going right now, Shawn?
Well, during the break, I was thinking about, what it takes to really bring behavior and character in the line. And I just, there's a gentleman in my life, Hunter Armstrong, who's a director of hoplology, which is the study of combat throughout the ages. And I just, he brings up the point of always trying to be the exemplar. And being an exemplar is someone who has character, capabilities, and consciousness. You combine all three of those to be able to come to that end result of accountability and action in your environment. And those behaviors and actions that you take shape life. And I really like how he's encapsulated approaching life and giving a pathway to what we do as warriors. It's a good one. So, I would say to our listening audience today, focus on your capabilities, your consciousness, and your character, and what you're developing, and take a look inside. Try to bring meaning into focus and produce order out of chaos.
Oh, yeah, introspection is always a good thing. It's my favorite sport, actually. One thing that will elucidate everybody, does he have any books, any material online that you would want to pimp on my show? You're welcome to do it, brother. Hunter.
He's actually, I'm Hunter Armstrong is the director of hoplology. You can find him online. Just look up hoplology, and it'll lead you to his web pages and what we do down there. I work with him quite closely, and I think folks, to give you an idea of the kind of resource he is, when Stephen Pressfield wrote the book Gates of Fire, he actually went to Mr. Armstrong to find out how the Spartans actually fought. He's referenced in the back of the book as one of the first thank yous by Pressfield for that book. That book has been on the Army and Marine reading list for quite a long time. So to give you an idea of how much you should pay attention to what Hunter Armstrong has to say, that's a good reference point.
Outstanding. After the show's over, I want you to send me a how to spell it. I will put it into the book, all the hopology and stuff. I want it to be down into the. I have not read his book, so that's something I will have to read. Definitely, or check out his site. I definitely want to share that with folks. So, just sit in the Skype.
He's a great resource for this community.
Yeah, I definitely type it out on Skype, and I will throw it into the link. And so,
Roger that.
That's the one thing I also talk about, and you probably feel the same way I do. History does not repeat; it rhymes, it echoes, and what you do today will follow everybody down your line. Now, I am a Christ believer, but I also believe in the old gods too. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't understand is you have to believe in you have to respect your ancestors, and you also have to have a guiding vision of something. And why it may seem counterintuitive.
Yeah. Kaiser, I mean, that's people should look at myths and legend and re-engage different ideas again. One of the oldest books known to mankind is the Enuma Elish, which outlines the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is Gilgamesh and Enkidu's adventures and journey. And there's so much about being human in what our mythologies are.
Right.
So to look again with a fresh eye at what's being said in our legends and myths is a critical component to growth.
Oh, I agree. I mean, that's one thing that was elucidated to me at a point when, and it was, I don't know, it's not recent, but it's been, I guess, throughout my life, I understood it. It just became more prescient, I think, around 2000. Can't remember when my cousin died, but when a certain baton got passed to me, and now my son is the last in line of our family line. And there's been a saying in our, there's a couple sayings in our family. Is one's the line marches on, it's on every one of our tombstones, and of course we get burned. We don't go in whole, except for the females. If they want to, they can. But our house motto, our sigil motto, is we will stand, period. It didn't matter what nation state we were in since Maria Theresa, the last empress of Austria. Our house has stood. And it's that kind of respect, I think. It transcends. Here's the thing, in combat, and I always knew this, I said one prayer, of course, Psalm 91 is always cool, but I break it down even quicker than that. I'm like, Lord, put my feet where you want them to be today. For good, and that's with an open heart, good or bad. It matters not what happens to me, but you want me to be there for a reason. And it gives you more reason to do what you do. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely does. And you've got to be able to, identify with your structured beliefs, how you organize the world, and make effect. We live in an age of durable disorder.
Right.
And the actions that we take have those impacts and those ripples like we've talked about. You've got to have your actions come from a seat of belief, a seat of organization, how you've structured the world. And you've got to embrace it. And as a matter of fact, to discuss religion in particular, since you brought it up, what makes our Islamic enemy so powerful is their guide for action, their belief in their what they value in their belief system. That weaponizes.
Oh yeah.
And, it's very human behavior, very human.
And honestly, I think the whole SJW crap that's going on, I honestly believe this. I believe that's a religion to these people. And I think that's where...
Well, yeah, it is. State religion.
A state religion, exactly. No different than communism, which it is. My thought process is very simple. I stood against communists at an actual physical wall. I mean, there's so many parallels I could put on certain things that keep reoccurring. And it's not they repeat, they echo. And walls are built for good things. Walls can also be built for bad things. Protecting your nation state, why do you think the East Germans erected that wall? It was to keep people from escaping, not to keep West Germans from coming in. That's a bad thing. Says I'm offline. Says I'm back online. All right, here we go. We're going to try this again.
Hello?
All right, we're back, brother.
There, good sir.
I think it got disconnected for a reason. You there? You there, Shawn? You there? Can you hear me, Shawn? I can hear you. We'll try this again. Hello. I heard you the first time.
Hello?
I hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear
Hello?
me? Can you hear me? I think you're in a dead spot. Shawn, can you hear me? Shawn, I can.
Yes, it's for some reason going crazy on this end.
Yeah, it went crazy on my
Can you hear
end.
me good?
Yeah, it went crazy on my end when we got talking about touchy subjects. Uh, what the whole
Yeah,
conversation, the whole conversation was about what we both know is total war. That's what people forget and what that
yeah,
looks like. And I think that's the blind spot that all republics find themselves in, i.e., history does not repeat, but it echoes. You know, your
right,
thoughts?
right. Well, I think Sean McFate just came out with a book called The New Rules of War, which really aren't new rules, but he mentions durable disorder in there and how 4GW components are being prosecuted against the United States by our adversaries. And
Right.
I implore you, if you get a chance, take that book on board because he's got a lot. He's a former contractor as well, so we've got a guy that's walked our walk, who's laid it out in academic fashion.
Nice. I like that. So we will support him. Give me a link, of course, when you get home. It sounds like you're on the road. Make sure to give me a link.
Yeah,
And
apologies. I've got a couple things I'm doing here.
no, it's not a problem. Not a problem. It's just what happens. So what we'll do is I'll put all the links in the description on my video. But it was funny because my Skype went down, then my OBS went down, and then my video went down. And all of a sudden it's back up now. It says it is. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. I find that pretty fun. I've had strong signal and then everything just cut out on this end. So
Yeah,
I'm not sure what's gone on there, but it's been great talking to you today for sure.
it's always great talking with you, brother. You know that. We always have a good conversation. And like I tell everybody who listens, this is just some brothers talking. Um, if you need to go, we can go or we can continue on. It's up to you, brother.
Well, I've got about a 20-minute drive to. I've got a couple of things that I have to do today that I can't get out of,
Cool.
and I'm more than happy to stay with you as long as the connection holds. Does that
Cool.
work for you?
Yeah, that works for me. We'll do the last 20 minutes. And I was trying to go down the conspiracy road. Just what we talked about earlier was how every conspiracy theory has a certain grain of truth. And there's one guy who was called a conspiracy theory for years. I actually have talked with the dude. Dude's a good dude. And he's probably written the best book on the JFK assassination. And you know what's so funny is that's when the term conspiracy theory actually came out, was because of that. And his name's Robert Morningstar. His book escapes me now, the title of it, but you definitely should give a look-see at that. And just Robert Morningstar. And I think you'll see, a lot of his theories back in the day, theories, quote unquote, have come to pass where it's been proven out. I mean, that's one case that's been ad infinitum, exhaustively researched by many, but he was one that I think stands the test of time. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I don't. I'm not huge into conspiracy theory stuff myself. That doesn't mean that I discount it. I just don't spend the time and attention towards it because I'm trying to do other things. But
Right.
let's face it. You know, there's a basket of players out there that want to control information,
Yep.
and that's in constant play. So you know, how we prosecute 4GW warfare, total war, are affected by those players wanting to manage information. I don't doubt that some pretty crazy things have happened throughout time, whether it's JFK and the possibility there of everything that's going on around him, or other instances. You know, truth is stranger than fiction, and you know, there's plenty out there that's possible.
Well, you and I have both seen different things of truth that is stranger than fiction.
Well,
I mean, we've discussed it tonight.
You know, yeah, and not only that, but you know, for instance, I've had firsthand experience with the weapons of mass destruction claim that there are none in Iraq.
Same here.
How many dozens of other guys listening to this podcast have had the same? We know how the repression of the actual data is done, and you know, that narrative is what they're looking for. So you know, JFK hit on the narrative that could possibly got up, you know, and that's just the potential for it. You know, I don't know whether that's the truth or not, but like I said, you know, more people have looked into that. You know, I also I wonder what's happened with what's known as the MK Ultra program. That's something that is of interest to me, and what's happened with that program. Because now we're talking about affecting people's viewpoints, perceptions, and nervous systems. And, you know, we know for a fact that program was in place.
Oh, it was, and it still is. It's just been retitled. I mean, look, every program, it's just like when they said, when they came out and said, oh, we've decided we're not doing this program. I can't remember what it was. It was only like a week ago. And I was like, well, they replaced it with something else that's not on oversight. Like I said, every conspiracy theory,
right.
I think it was Prism actually. When they say they're not doing it anymore, they're doing something else that's more advanced. That's a fact.
And you know, how many, you know, we know plausible deniability is part of that narrative.
Yes.
So.
And it just like, remember, it started from carnivore. We can go down the entire list of where it went to until Prism. That stuff was real. How many times did your phone ring, turn off? You didn't touch anything. How many times you were on a call and dropped everything? And the first time it rings and everybody's phone in the entire operations center rings and you're the new guy and you pull it out, and all of a sudden you're like, hello, hello, and everybody's laughing at you because they made everybody's phones go off all at once.
Yep.
That's real deal shit. And there's some other stuff that we experienced. It's just like the facial rec stuff. All of this stuff, man, we know what it looks like when they're collecting information on you. But yet they don't do it, you know. Police now, that's
well, every CAC card has an RFID. It has an RFID
chip. Yeah, and so do the passports.
You know, they know where that card is.
Mm-hmm. Same with the passports.
You know, exactly, they know where those chips are.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's all SatLink now. Do you remember back in the day, during the time we were rolling with money, $1 a minute, or no, it was $3 a minute. I'm sorry, $1.50 was the cheapest I was able to get it, and that was with Global Star. Sat phones. You remember having your? I still have my Sat phone.
Yeah.
You know, satellite phones.
Inmarsat. I know. I have mine.
Yeah. You know, so my first one was, oh shit, what was it called? It was Iridium. I can't think of the name of the company right now. And my second one was a Global Star because it was cheaper. It was $3 a minute with the Iridium ones. That was the government issued one. And I bought one through Global Star. Shit, the price of it, I think, was $700 when I bought my Global Star. You there? You there, bro?
Yeah, hey, buddy, I'm going to lose you. I apologize.
No worries.
Yeah, I'm here, but I'm going to lose you for sure because I've got to head through a canyon.
I'm going to close out right now then. We will do another show, folks, and it will be epic because we're going to talk mostly about mentorism. That is the OODA loop mentorism. Those two things need more time, and like you said, it needs an entire show. You good with that?
Roger that. I sure am.
All right, brother. Well, I'm going to close it out. I'll try to get a hold of you later on. We'll talk about it. All right. God bless. Be well. Be safe.
Goodbye.
Bye. And, folks, so now you got a deeper dive into reality that you may or may not believe in, but it actually happens. And I'd like you all to, when he gives those links, I will provide them. He had stuff to do. I get that totally. But as always, please visit Axion Ghost site if you like his music and enjoy. With that being said, chef out.